Boom. All right. Welcome to the new class that I have created. This is the first time I've presented this version of my course of my class that I have made by hand. I picked and pulled from my 3 hour long presentation that's also on YouTube. Three versions of it too. I recorded that for 3 times. I've done 3 classes so far. This is my fourth class ever teaching these concepts and sharing these concepts more so with you guys who are very interested in vibration, frequency, and space, I guess is the right finale word for that. So I'm really honored to be here. Of course, my name is Alexis of Ascension Diaries, which is YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and ascensiondiaries.com now. I have a reach, at least according to these social medias, of about 30,000 if you culminate all of them. But I only have so much participation because I believe of censorship. So this is an opportunity where I actually can connect with people through the sensors, through the web, and discuss these important topics and everything that I have found and shared. And this has been years and years of research and dedication on my part as a blogger of taking the data of space weather and receiving information back from the collective, from the audience on how they're feeling, how they're doing, how they're responding to space weather. And I get a lot of questions. I field a lot of questions, and I teach this concepts over and over and over in the messaging apps of all of these social media platforms. And now that I have my website, it's making it easier for me to do this work, making it easier for me to reach people and have people sign up. So if you're not signed up for my website, at least just even a free, get your email on there. Otherwise, you can get a $1 subscription. Right now is the January special because this is the first month it's ever been live. So it's only $1 to be a member. Next month, I'm going to up it by $1 and so on. So this is the best deal you're ever going to get as a member of my site, which gets you access to these classes, other events that I'm doing. And, you know, I'm not stopping this project, so more things are coming. So you're going to get access to that in the future. As if you don't remove your subscription, you know, you can be a ride or die, like you can be here for the rest of it. So I'm honored to have you. I titled this class Space Weather Class, 25 Questions and Answers. It's created by myself. And I just want to make a note that all the starred items in the following slides that are coming require further explanation. So if you're just reading it or you're on the replay and you see that there's stars around items, be sure to pay attention to when I explain those things, because those are moments where further explanation is needed. So I just wanted to make that note. People are coming here today because this class is going to be helping you learn some of the basic science about space weather, as well as read the charts that are very popular on social media about space weather yourself. Based off of my own experience and my own knowledge, I have a bachelor's of arts in psychology, and I took my master's instead of going and paying people at the university to get a master's and get their permission to do any research in the world. I became majorly disillusioned with the whole psychology program because of my discovery of space weather and its influences on our psyche, and how I went through 4.5 years of education, top dollar education, and and I never heard of this. I was not taught this, and to me it was just like the major factor that was obviously missing from my education. So that's why I made it my own pursuit. And I realized online I wasn't being educated very well either. Unfortunately, there's a lot of unanswered questions I had. So I decided to make myself the subject and create an experiment. And here we are many years later now. I believe that all started around 2016. And now we're at 2021. So things have happened. I have not stopped. I've been committed to this. I've not gotten bored. So this will show you, hopefully, I'm sharing with you my passion about this, and hopefully the info that I share here is going to feed your passions as well. That's my goal. My goal is to empower you and to share and to continue the conversation about these topics. So let's begin. First question: what is an environmental factor? Environmental factor, they are influences outside of yourself, outside of your body, outside of your cells, basically. And they inform influences outside that inform the expression of your DNA behavior, and health. So these are things like you can see in the image here, like the things that you eat, the things that you smoke, the things that you lift, the things that you don't lift, the how much running you do, how much candy you eat, how many toxins are in your environment. Toxins can be emotional, toxins can be behavioral, toxins can be physical. And so the Human Genome Project, one of the most famous genetic projects, one of the first famous genetic projects, publicly anyways, they mentioned that their whole project, all that money and effort and time, was only able to predict around 10% of disease based off of totally decoding the DNA, the gene, like all of this, the whole strands of DNA. They decoded all of it, and they realized that they could not find or figure out most of what is causing people to have disease. They found about 10% of the of signals in your DNA that could make you diseased and make you sick. And the rest of it's environmental mostly. So that's where we're going off so far with that science. We're going off of that data right now. And so what is the next question? The next question is, what is an electromagnetic field? So an electromagnetic field is created around every atom due to electrical charge and magnetic shifts. And some fun facts about the human's magnetic shield. So from one atom, all those atoms bunching in together to create objects and with life force within it, basically, we are one of those objects now, or a physical object, and our magnetic field is mostly created and most powerfully created by our heart, this organ in our chest. And it creates 60 times the electricity and 5,000 times the electromagnetic strength over your brain, as an example. So it's truly the strongest source of our own electromagnetic field. In a way, that's like the core of our atomic structure in a way. And a lot of people, are stuck thinking and making decisions with their brains. But unfortunately, the heart is actually the smartest and has the most intel pumping in and out of it. So it's really the best choice to make your decisions based off of how your heart responds to a decision. And it's scientifically proven here. And I've heard many people use this as a way to kind of understand that we are being brainwashed in a way to using our minds to make decisions instead of our hearts to make decisions, but in a way that actually impairs us and impairs our ability to, in a way, align with ourselves, which is a huge, huge deal. So again, another big part of why I was so interested in this study was, again, the psychology, they study the mind, they don't study the heart, but the heart is the one that's the one you should be listening to, and how to speak the language of the heart is something that most of you are probably much more familiar with now. Also, electromagnetic field propagates at the speed of light, so it moves incredibly fast. And also, there is a classic model, and also there's a quantum model of an electromagnetic field. And so, of course, we're now moving into more quantum science collectively, but thankfully this theory bridges into the quantum realm as well. All right, next question I'm going to be answering after I move my screen a little bit higher, I think. Gonna move me over there. All right, that helps a little. All right, next question is, what is frequency? So this is basic science. We're getting really into the basics. This is honestly one of the biggest issues I've noticed in this community online, is that we and the people posting words and numbers and getting super psyched, they don't have this basic level of scientific understanding, which is why I'm making this presentation. For those of you who don't know, what is frequency? 1 rotation per second of a wave or particle of energy. And here's an example. Little doodad moving there. So 1 rotation per second. So the second is the time that never changes. So how many rotations in that time is what the hertz is. Hertz, H-E-R-T-Z, is measured in hertz. So this little circle that's spinning, 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, you know, in 1 second, it's doing like half a rotation, as you can see. But frequencies on the electromagnetic spectrum, which is, we measure frequency in hertz, and all the frequencies on the spectrum are measured in hertz. And so the whole spectrum, which is all the light, all of the energy in the universe, is, it goes at different speeds, basically, these wavelengths. And that's how they differentiate them, is by how many times they rotate per second. And ironically, we tend to think about these waveforms like this first picture here in two-dimensional. Maybe you imagine waves just like coming at you like a squiggly coming at you directly like this. But in my opinion, and from the models that I've seen, in a way, they actually rotate towards you. They have a three-dimensional space. And so they are rotating, it's like a spiraling energy all through the universe. And sometimes they spiral really, really fast. And those are called cosmic radiation waves, basically, or gamma rays is in that range. They're very, very fast rotating things, which is why gamma radiation being measured is so important in the space community. They want to know how much cosmic energy and gamma rays are coming at us, because they are the fastest, most intense energy frequencies that land here on Earth and inform our DNA in our environment. All right. So the next thing that we need to know about frequency is amplitude. So amplitude is basically the loudness or the intensity of this frequency. So again, something's rotating 4 times per second. It's got a rotation of 4 hertz. But the amplitude is very loud, which means the wave or the circle of rotating particle or energy that's coming at you is very large. Like it's larger. The circle has gotten bigger. When the amplitude's small, the circle gets really small, and so on. So the amplitude could be really, really quiet, but it's still rotating towards you. But it's the intensity. And so how you see it in the 2D charts like this is the height of the wave. And then when it comes to a higher or lower pitch, it's how closely together the waves are happening as well. So, right. So yes, diameter of the circle is also the amplitude. Loudness of the frequency, units depend on the type of wave. Okay, so this is another big issue we're having in the community, is that the units of measurement, like frequency is hertz, the unit of measurement for amplitude has famously been not stated on the public sources of the Schumann Resonance charts and those that are related, which I think is very, very interesting, except for the Italian one. So in the Italian one measures amplitude like it's a sound wave. It measures it in decibels. Our human ears, react to decibels, but most of what we cannot hear is basically this space weather. Sometimes people do. They sometimes get in the range where they hear a little bit of a pitch in their ear, and then they're like, I think space weather is happening right now. That is indeed true. There is ways for our bodies to actually perceive these things other than our ears, which has been interesting. But on the Russian charts, ironically, they do not have amplitude. So that's where the biggest issue in this public science has been, is that people are stating, or they are incorrectly reading the Italian site and not using decibels at all. But the Russian site for sure has been the hardest one, because they do not state what they're using to measure amplitude. And the Wikipedia page used to say that they measured amplitude of the Schumann resonances in either picotesla or microvolt. And I believe now that that has been edited out of the Wikipedia page since I built my last class, which was a few months ago only, like maybe 2 months ago. I built the class, I looked it up again, and I couldn't find it in the article. even though I had previously known that from reading it on Wikipedia. So it's interesting. It's this very mysterious aspect, but also it's one of the most important aspects of reporting Schumann resonance electromagnetic disturbances in the community. So another term that people tend to use when they're talking about our amplitude is power. And power actually has its own terms and its own conditions in physics, which I didn't know because I do not have I don't have a very strong physics background, but my husband does. And he was like, well, power, there's a whole, there's a whole formula for measuring power. And I was like, okay, so we have to be really careful with what we use. So for me, I tend to just use the word amplitude to share. So I'm going to teach you soon about how to read these and how you should share this information that is actually correct scientifically, at least according to me and the work that I've done. I could still be wrong, but so far, and thousands of people I've seen, no one's gotten on my case about it. I've done extensive research on it to be sure. And, ironically, I have found that through research that there is a lack of this information again. So here we are. I'm trying my best. So amplitude, very important term. Next slide is, what are brainwaves? Well, brainwaves are electrical impulses in the brain between neuron cells. All behaviors, emotions, and thoughts are translated in your brainwaves. There are 5 classes of brainwaves, 5 different speeds, 5 different rotations per second categories of brainwaves. So there you go, a little graphic here. So I wanted to show you this graphic here on the bottom, well, both of them, but we have first, oh, I can see my mouse now. That's so funny. Such a strange, anyways. So here are the 5. Basically, delta is the quietest, gamma is the loudest, according to this classic model. Delta is below 4 hertz, so really, really low. Of course, if you have 0 hertz brainwaves, you're dead. So just so you know that. So starting at 0 is kind of redundant. So let's start at below 4. So like 1 to 4 hertz is the delta range. This is when you're sleeping your deepest. This is when your body is repairing itself because there's so little activity that your body is capable of now dealing with the rest of itself because your brain's finally chilling out and not taking over basically most of the nutrients and electrical data that you are receiving on a constant basis. So this is the time when we are repairing, and deeply sleeping is delta. Then if you have too much delta going on in your brain, perhaps you're having an issue, perhaps these are times when people go in for help because they're having an inability to think or learn. They're awake, but they're still dealing with delta waves, or they're sleeping and they're not getting enough delta waves and things like that. Delta waves are very important. They all are. The next one is theta waves. This is the one that is the most important when in relation to the Schumann resonances, in my opinion. Theta and alpha tend to be very important. It's funny because this chart seems to not, I don't know if these are actually fully correct. I was just reading today and now I'm like not 100% sure. So let's talk about both. The data on this graphic is now making me doubt myself a little bit, unfortunately, but we have some info here that we can still work with. For theta, this is meditative, feeling raw emotions state. It's the next one up from deep sleep. So it's still very, very relaxed. This is when you're meditating and you're really like, you're in your meditative state. You're in another place. You're not quite dreaming, but you are. In a way, this is when you're really getting in touch with yourself. Everything is calm. This is a good state. And it is in between 4 and 8 hertz, which is where the primary Schumann resonance of the Earth falls into. It falls into that range. So isn't that beautiful? The natural state of our Earth's electromagnetic buzzing that our brains connect with, it hangs out in this meditative state. So we should all be kind of in a meditative state. and feeling raw emotions without all the interactions and interruptions that are possibly happening with the Schumann resonance. The Earth's natural state and with you is very happy, meditative, calm, and emotional place. So isn't that beautiful? Then we have alpha waves, which are a little bit faster. This is also where the second Schumann resonance frequency hangs out around, is alpha waves. So the second one is not as strong as the first one, but alpha waves are pretty strong when it comes to humans, because this is when we are, in a way, this is our like relaxed awake state. This is when we're relaxed, we're daydreaming, we're not actively moving around, we aren't stressed about anything. Then we have beta waves. Again, the Schumann resonances, also the second and third one hang out in this area. So very much in connection still. Beta waves between 40 and 30 hertz, 40 and 30 rotations per second. This is normal alertness while awake. And then we can go into high beta, which is when you're getting into an unhealthy amount of mental activity and stress. And so that's when you're getting into high beta, you're like, your eyes are starting to bug out of your head and you're starting to freak out about everything. And these are the times when you go, all right, brain, we're going to do some things to help relax and get us back down into maybe theta. Maybe go and meditate for a few, and maybe you'll meet in the middle at alpha a little bit easier afterwards. And then finally, we have gamma, which is what the fourth, in my opinion, but based off of this is not so much, but this is the fastest moving brainwave activity, which is when you're learning, your heightened perception, REM sleep. So this is when you can get into gamma brainwave state when you're getting downloads and when you are receiving information. Your brainwaves potentially are at gamma right now with listening to me speak and teach you these things, depending on your background level of knowledge on this. You might be kind of bored right now, but if you're like ingesting this really hard for the first time, your brainwaves are most likely closer to a gamma state right now. So we are constantly bouncing around through these brainwave states, and as well as these brainwave states can be influenced from our environment. What is entrainment? Sympathetic, or it's also called sympathetic resonance as another term I've heard relative to this. So entrainment is, in a way, a physics term, and it talks about a vibratory body responding to an external vibration in which it has harmonic likeness. So for example, when one tuning fork is ringing, and then there's another tuning fork nearby and they're properly stationed and standing up, then when you ring one, the other one will actually start to vibrate because they are pretty similar in likeness. They are both tuning forks. For example, another example of entrainment, or a major example, I should say, of an entrainment that you may know, is binaural beats. This has become wildly popular, I would say, in the parapsychology kind of community, the consciousness community. It's as a tool to help regulate and manage your own brainwaves. Because again, there are environmental factors that can actually cause you to be stuck in certain brainwave experiences. And this can be very draining for a body. It can be very draining for your mind and your spirit. So some people have taken it into their own hands and they have begun using binaural beats to allow and actually entrain their brain physically and manually to a different brainwave state. And how they do this is really cool. This isn't always the case for the body, but when it comes to hearing things, this is how it works. So one ear and another ear, there's two different sounds. There's two different frequencies. There's two different rotations per second, okay? As in this picture, on the left, you see 315 hertz, 315 rotations per second. And then on the right-hand side, on the other ear, you see 325 rotations per second, or hertz. And it's when you subtract 325 from 315, you get the number 10. And so the resulting frequency between your two ears is 10 hertz, which again is around a theta or alpha state. That's a normal, in a way, a normal waking state where you're pretty calm, pretty alert, you know, but you're not stressed out. That's a great time. So people will buy apps, people will go on YouTube and so on, and they will put, you have to have headphones. This only works if you have, your headphones on, because your headphones can do that. They can operate with two different, signals into each side. Pardon me. And I'm actually gonna have some water. So basically, this technology is extremely basic. Like, think about it. Your entire brain, your whole vibe of your whole body and your mind can be changed by just popping on some headphones and listening to a binaural beat video or binaural beat app or whatever, and specifically program what brainwave state you want to be in. And so for all of you watching, I would also like to offer a warning and just some caution when finding these binaural beat videos online, just so you know, because your brains are that sensitive to this entrainment factor, what you are ingesting and putting into your body is very important. So if you're listening to a binaural beats thing and you're starting to feel a little weird just a few moments in, don't keep listening to it. I would recommend you be very cautious with what you do use this with and this knowledge with, because your brains are very, very delicate. And I have a feeling that because this is such a simple science, it has become very complex, and there is a lot of applications possible with this that my awareness is not even, fully tapped into yet, because I don't have a background exactly in binaural beats, but I've used them for myself and I have enjoyed them. And I don't use them as much anymore, but I still listen to solfeggio frequencies, which are similar, but you don't need headphones for them. And you entrain just by listening to the room. And that's another way to do it in a way. But binaural beats is very, very quick and effective way to shift your brainwave state. All right. So what vibrating bodies around us influence us? So like I said, entrainment is when a vibratory body responds to external vibrations. What vibratory bodies are influencing us right now? Our planet is a big one, very big vibrating body that we are born on, walking on, living on all day, every day. Then our moon is the next one. The moon, going through its lunar cycles, has particular effects. So watching the lunar cycles is very important for those of you who are sensitive to energies. For example, full moons tend to make brainwave activity a little bit more hyped, which is why people have a harder time sleeping during full moons, myself included recently. But I also heard that wearing silver will help with the being thrown off by moon energy. I've heard that in the esoteric realm. I've heard that and I've used it. And either way, even as a sugar pill effect, it worked. And I slept through the night the last full moons because my mother just bought me a nice little silver ring for Christmas. So I was like, I'm going to wear this ring and see how it goes. And it helped me sleep during last full moon. We're currently experiencing a new moon. So again, that energy is different. It's less intense, in my opinion. The light bouncing off the moon from the sun is not happening at the time. It's kind of missing in a way. The sun is missing the earth, or missing the moon. Okay, other sources are the stars, including our own star, our solar system star, the head honcho of our solar system, and then as well other stars that are nearby, other galaxies, other quasars, other explosions, other, the galactic central sun, whatever you want to use. Other stars out there are also giant vibratory bodies that are in our environment. Although they are far, still seem to have an impact on certain occasions more so than others. Another vibratory body that's influencing us is other people. They call this the collective consciousness, actually, because we are so like each other. We have a similar harmonic to each other because of our geometric structure as humans, basically. We have a much closer influence over each other, even quantumly, and there's a term called the 100th monkey effect, which was when 100 monkeys on an island learned how to wash sweet potatoes in the water. the monkeys of the same type all over the world began doing the exact same behavior without learning it, and they picked it up faster than the beings that originally learned that skill, which is pretty fantastic. So, the thoughts and the feelings and the vibes of the people around you have a major impact on many levels. So, that's probably why a lot of us who are becoming energetically sensitive during these times, during these big shifts in basically human behavior on earth, a lot of us are hermiting away and isolating and quarantining right now in a way, because I believe the vibration of other people is, because of stress, much higher than usual and unhealthy. And if the group of us get unhealthy, then we're just going to get way unhealthy real fast. So I believe that's another secret reason why why we were isolated and why we've been isolated, because it's game time. The energies we're being vibrated, we're being stimulated on a higher level, and we need to, in a way, kind of remove ourselves from each other so we don't like totally go into fits of rage and confusion and expressions of, unhealthy things. Those of you living with a partner or living at home, even in this isolation, are probably noticing this impact that's having. Being around other people is a lot more irritating during sometimes. Even right now, the last few days, I've been noticing that. And so these are things to watch. And the last thing is artificial frequencies are as well influencing our vibration. These vibrating frequencies that are being pulsed between satellites and pulsed between um, land dishes and land arrays of satellites, and then out there in space, and then between towers and between buildings and between phones and between lots of technology that's going on right now, between cities, within cities, all artificial frequencies, which I would say are just not created by living beings or not living beings, things that are not living but still giving off very powerful frequencies because living beings designed them that way and created them in their likeness in a way. Those things are also influencing us on a daily basis. Excuse me. Okay, I'm going to check the comments right now.
Why the arpeggio frequencies are so high that correlates with the brain waves?
Oh, that's a great question. Okay, so the question is, why are solfeggio frequencies so high in hertz, 432, 528? How does that correlate with brain delta, theta, etc.? Okay, this is a good question, and I honestly feel like I got this psychic hit to look into this before my class, and then I got distracted, but because I was wondering the same thing. But I'm pretty sure in the science of frequency, there is stepping up in the math, stepping up in size, and it's like a simple equation basically of this stepping up. So the four, like an octave. That's what I remember knowing about it. But this is a great question, and I think adding that into the next class would be really awesome. But I believe it does have something to do with that. And these higher rotating frequencies, we're still able to perceive them, of course, but in a way, they are more complex and they are larger than the simple brainwave frequencies that are bopping around in your head. And these more complex frequencies, that's why they're more of a healing modality. That's why you don't put them in your ears, even though you can do you can do binaural beats for 432, but that means you'd need much higher rotating things to have the difference or the subtraction between those two numbers equal 432. But I have seen that available in apps. I'm talking to my husband. He's standing right here.
Thing is like when you take a note at a certain frequency and multiply it,
Yeah.
and you get a color in that higher frequency. So if you take, like, say, an E and you multiply it by, it's like 42, that frequency is now a color. And
right.
Correlate to the chakra, so it's similar to that.
Yeah, okay, good. So yes, there is a technique of multiplying by a certain number these frequencies, and it can change the octave. It changes the properties. It expands the properties, in my opinion, of that frequency. So if that helps answer your question. Great question. Thank you very much, Victoria. Taking notes in gamma. Thank you. Very good. All right, so let's move on. Let's move on to the fun stuff. Most of you are here to talk about this topic, in my opinion. This is one of my favorite topics. This is the one I've been fighting tooth and nail with the space weather community a little bit on YouTube and so on. I can't tell you how many times I've had people ask me to look at other space weather channels and being like, hopefully you're watching this channel. Hopefully you're looking at this channel. And I'll be honest, I have looked and looked. I've looked at all of them. I looked at all of them many years ago, and I watched them and I went, this isn't fully what I want to know. This isn't even grazing the surface. And they are not. Most of them are not talking about the Schumann resonance, but now thankfully they are. Some of them believe the Schumann resonance is total crap science and doesn't have a leg to stand on. But unfortunately, that's an unscientific opinion, in my opinion, because there is such a huge body, as well as NASA and, you know, many other major scientific planetary websites and publications are like, yeah, the Schumann resonances, they're there, they exist, they are a part of us, they are part of our environment, and as we'll see later on in the presentation, they're imperative for life, based off of the research I know. So again, people get really hyped about the Schumann resonance. It's one of the most hyped terms now in the space weather community, and it gets tossed around and thrown around, and that's why I'm offering this class. So what is the Schumann resonance? It is a set. It's not just one, there is multiple. It's like its own scale, like a musical scale almost of our planet. It's beautiful, but it's a set of extremely low frequencies, which means they rotate very slowly compared to most frequencies. Most frequencies are rotating quite, a decent amount. Even just visible light and color is rotating faster than the Schumann resonances. They are huge waves. So extremely low frequencies. You will see ELF a lot. So just so you know, it means extremely low frequencies. And then there's VLF, which is very low frequencies. So very similar terminology, but a little bit more inclusive with VLF. You get a little bit more in a higher range. So the Schumann resonances, they peak at 7.83 hertz, 14 hertz, 20 hertz, 26 hertz, 33 hertz, 39 hertz, 45 hertz, and then I've also seen 60 be added in there, but I believe the 60 has something else to do with the electromagnetic field of Earth, and it's a little bit of I would say just keep watching that one, but it's not as imperative to the Schumann resonances. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 peaks. 7 peaks of relevance and frequency in our electromagnetic field. And these peaks are considered the Schumann resonances in the most basic term. Where are the Schumann resonances? So they are just a part of Earth's electromagnetic field, which you can imagine has many more frequencies existing within it, not just these extremely low ones. The cavity that they exist in is between the surface of the planet and the ionosphere, which is one of the highest layers of our atmosphere. It's the electrical plasma layer of our atmosphere. It is considered the global atmospheric electrical circuit. It's one of the first layers that all this cosmic radiation from the outside interacts with, and it depolarizes it, and it polarizes it, and there's plasma, and there's a lot of movement across the whole surface of the ionosphere around our planet when this cosmic energy comes in and stimulates it. So these particles, they ionize and they create these electrons. And so these ultraviolet light and X-rays and cosmic rays are turned into electrons, basically, to be used and to be, worked with and displaced and balanced on our planet. So the cavity space is huge. It's 50 miles up from the ground, 50 miles up from the ground on a, what's the word? Sea level or whatever. And so I did some math, and that is 733 football fields stacked on top of each other right above your head. Or if you are in the metric system, they're 80 kilometers above the surface on average, which is 19,500 cars stacked on top of each other. So again, just to give you a visual of how much space this cavity is and where they are measuring these Schumann resonances in, it's a huge cavity. So you have a long antenna from the ground up into the sky, basically. I don't even know how long it needs to be. May not even need to be that long to pick up these frequencies because they're so huge. But that's how they measure them. They like basically have this antenna and it just gets hit by all of these wavelengths. And that's how they get a lot of their data about what is going on in their environment. Because again, we cannot see it. It's vibrating in a range that we cannot see and we cannot hear. But so are many, many other frequencies out there. The visible light spectrum and our hearing range is actually pretty small. Other animals, that's why it's nice to live with animals, because they can actually perceive other vibrations that you cannot. And so they're like a little warning system in a way sometimes. And even babies and children have a grander range of these things sometimes. And then when we age, our ability to perceive these things can get worn down, like the little hairs in your eardrum or so on, or in your cochlea or whatever that perceive sound. Those hairs can get worn down if you're going to concerts all the time, and those hairs just like basically vibrate themselves into dust. And so, fun fact, but yes, anyways. So this is the space also that radio frequencies are bounced around in. So this is huge. Radio is one of the this is like the most primary way for a very, very long time. And I guess in human history, that we've been able to communicate to each other, and they've only built off of that technology. Instead of remove it, they've made it even more intense and more capable of communication. And radio frequencies are very powerful, and we also receive radio frequencies from the sun when CMEs go off, which we're going to talk about in a bit. But I just want to show you this graphic just so you can see that that wavelength that you see, that red wave that you're seeing on that graphic that's kind of going through the guy's brain and exiting the other side, imagine that that's really happening. Like, look outside and imagine all around the cavity, the entire cavity of the Earth, the Schumann resonance is only rotating 7.83 times per second. It's a very large, very, very like slow moving frequency in a way. So the next question, I'm gonna, whoop. What the heck? I feel like I'm like blocking everything. Here we go. Go back. No, go back. There it goes. All right. The next question is, how are they generated? So lightning, this is, okay, I took a lot of this data, and I've taken a lot of this data from, I've taken some data from Wikipedia, I've taken some data from NASA, and some of it is just in my own words because it's just being tossed around everywhere, this data. So they say that how the Schumann resonances are generated are by lightning discharges, exactly like 2,000 storms that are happening on Earth at a time, at all times. There's like 2,000 storms chilling, lightning bolting and thundering around the Earth. And then there's about 50 flashes per second that are constantly discharging on the Earth, on different places of the Earth, basically. So again, in a way, tracking the Schumann resonances, you can know that there is Schumann resonance being generated by you when you're in a lightning storm, that is, you're watching them being born, you're watching them being generated for the whole planet. It's really cool. They are also generated by seasonal and daily movement of solar radiation. So it's not just lightning. Again, the particles from the outside of the Earth's field and Earth's cavity there are also stimulating and adding electrons to our system, which is why we have lightning, so that energy can ground into the Earth. And then that shock wave, and that basically that shock wave of all that lightning powering into the Earth is what causes this vibration to be amplified and fed, basically. That's the theory. And so during seasonal shifts like spring and fall and winter and summer shifts that we all, we all experience every year, four times a year, those are times when the Schumann resonances are the most active. I've noticed a lot of the time they are and in particular, I've noticed that February and March, the springtime, at least in my hemisphere, springtime, are when I see the highest readings in Russia, which makes sense because they're in the same hemisphere as I am. But springtime seems to be the most popular time, which is why I'm wearing this shirt, which I have on my Teespring store. This was during February 17th, this 24-hour long amplitude blast. That was February 17th, 2019. So every time we get to February and March, I'm always like, yeah, like we're going to see the good stuff. I'm always excited. That's like my season. It's my favorite season of the year now, because I get the most traffic to my work and I get the most new people and conversations and new friends and stuff, because this is like my territory in a way now. But what else also happens is the daily movement. So when the Earth is spinning and the sun is radiating one side of the planet and one side of our geomagnetic field, our ionosphere as well, that also is exciting that side of the planet. So you'll see on the charts, it tends to rise and fall, at least in the location they're measuring. The amplitude in the background will kind of rise and fall on a 24-hour basis, or a 12-hour basis, I should say, not 24, 12-hour basis. So during the day, they have a little bit more background of Schumann resonance showing up amplitude-wise, and then during the night, it's a little bit quieter. And then during the night, there's also these random huge blasts that come in, and that's also why I do the blog, because all of these beautiful scientific things like, oh, it's lightning, and oh, it's just seasonal and daily changes, and oh, it's just Earth's magnetic field shifts and earthbound phenomena and space sourced phenomena. Don't worry about it. But that's what makes it interesting, because again, it's not just a daily shift. There's also magnetic field shifts, which are caused by solar weather, which we'll get into, earthbound phenomena, which is, on the surface of the Earth, things are stimulating our ionosphere, which I just said radio frequencies do. Radio towers and satellites, they pop around and pop off in that area. And then space sourced phenomena like cosmic radiation. Whenever we get these articles about a galaxy or a star or something blowing up, because every once in a while they'll put out those articles, but they love to put out those articles about 4 or 5 months after it's already happened, which is always annoying for me. But these are also times when I've noticed the Schumann resonance gets more excited. So why are the Schumann resonances so important? Well, Mars, Venus, Jupiter, Saturn, and Saturn's biggest moon, Titan, also have a Schumann resonance of their own. Of course, they don't call it Schumann resonance because that's actually named after a dude who mathematically discovered it before they physically discovered it with antennas and computers and stuff. This guy has been super lucky. His last name is being used to describe this frequency that is so important, so much bigger than who he was and what he did. And I think it's hilarious that we name these things after the people who discovered them, because it's like, again, this is a normal planetary experience. And I'll get into that in a second. Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, all these planetary bodies in our own solar system have their own version of this Schumann resonance. But again, we won't call it a Schumann resonance. In a way, you could call it, planetary resonance, or Venus resonance, or Mars resonance, or Jupiter resonance. It's just kind of funny. Also, why are they important? Because astronauts need it in space. So when the astronauts get outside of the cavity that the Schumann resonances are vibing in on our planet, their bodies go, what the heck's going on? And they start to freak out, and they start to be less grounded, and their vibration, all of their vibe just gets totally thrown off. And they figured this out pretty quickly before they started sending people out into space, I guess. But who knows how that they really discovered that this is a truth. But they are telling it once in a while. They'll mention it, but it's kind of hard to even find this data on the internet. But it's going to become more common knowledge, of course. It is already. But yes, they have Schumann resonance imitators on the space station, is what I've come to know and understand. And, you know, probably on craft that are also in space. Even those space planes, potentially, they may need to have a Schumann resonance generator. These are the things you got to think about. And so it also makes you think, when we go to another planet, we are used to our planet's Schumann resonance, and then we go to another planet and their resonance is going to be in a different range because of the size of the planet. So therefore their cavity is going to be a different size. And so the scale that's created is going to be slightly different. And so how do they overcome that issue with, you know, if we're going to be sending men to the moon, or sorry, men to Mars, and even the moon, I'm assuming they have to put it in their outfit. They have to put this like little generator, this like earth resonance generator, as like a little umbilical cord, basically, to keep our bodies in alignment, keep your brain waves and everything in alignment. Okay, so what are some qualities that we need, that are needed to create a Schumann resonance? This life-giving brainwave range frequency. What do you need? So it's interesting that these other planets have these frequencies, because it may be a sign for life. It may be a requirement for life in a lot of ways, or at least intelligent life with big brains and so on. That's kind of what I've been, you know, pushing the research towards, is figuring that part out. So the existence of Schumann-like resonances is conditioned primarily by two factors on a planet. First, you need a closed, planetary-sized, and approximately spherical cavity consisting of conducting lower and upper boundaries, separated by an insulating medium. So for Earth, we have the ground, the surface, which is our lower boundary. Our upper boundary is this ionosphere. It's this electrical, basically this electrical layer of our high atmosphere. And the medium is our atmosphere. It's our air. It's all of these gases that are in the air, gases and fluids, I guess I should say, as well, that are there. And that's what are part of causing these. And then the second thing that you need is a source of electrical excitation and of electromagnetic waves in the ELF range. So again, these lower frequencies, something needs to be generating these frequencies on the planet or within the planet. So most likely the easiest way for that to happen is solar radiation, which is kind of like a full spectrum in a way. A lot of that light is like pretty full spectrum light, and it excites the ionospheres of these planets and excites their atmospheres, and that's how you get this song to start. Like my bird, very excited. All right, so here are some esoteric theories. What are some esoteric theories? Well, people who claim to work with intuitive gifts and energies, like people who do Reiki or people who are psychics, tend to gravitate towards the Schumann resonances for many uses. People who do acupuncture, people who do, I don't know, lots of different modalities work with frequency. So these practitioners tend to gravitate towards the Schumann resonance charts, I've noticed, because they have other uses for them. And so one is making sense of discomfort and euphoria. Sometimes because you didn't have a thought that sparked your euphoria or sparked your discomfort, all of a sudden you're sitting there and you're like, oh, like I feel weird and just uncomfortable. And or all of a sudden you're like, let's go do every single chore ever. And there's moments like that that are hard to understand. They're unpredictable as well. They're unpredictable moments, which is why people have then gone to looking into the Schumann resonance and space weather. And that's where the unpredictability kind of goes to die, because they see a lot of the time that their activity has actually been sparked in time with space weather and earthbound electromagnetic shifts and frequencies. And there's lots of apps and stuff that you can follow. The Schumann Resonance app. There is the Space Weather News app. You can also visit SolarHam.com as well, as another recommendation that I have just off the top of my head for you all watching right now. Another esoteric theory is, I'm sorry, my mouth is like weirdly dry. I'm stumbling over words more than I usually do. It's like my lips are getting stuck. this stuff I have on my lips is actually like stopping me from being able to speak properly. Problem some men will never know. That's so funny. All right. Anyways, relating the activity to ascension. So a lot of people, again, who are working in the esoteric are aware or at least curious about the term or the discussion of ascension, which is a religious term in a way. In a way, it's a Christian term, which talks about reaching this level and this state of awareness of the universe, and awareness of love, and this combination and this reuniting of love in your everyday thoughts, actions, emotions, opinions, all of it. Or conscious awakenings, which is then, instead of going to the ascension crowd, which can be a little bit more, I would say, a little bit more esoteric than the thought of conscious awakening, the collective consciousness awakening. But either way, there is activity related when the collective consciousness is being stirred up, is directly affected by solar flares and all this stuff. Solar energy, Schumann resonances, those seem to correlate very often. Relating activity to intelligent beings and in other planes of existence. Literally, I've seen now in the community people taking the Schumann resonance readings and saying that this is some of these readings we're seeing, these excited readings, excited moments on the charts, that actual, in a way, like spacefaring, heightened consciousness beings from Earth and not from Earth, in our dimension, in our density, not in our dimension, not in our density, participating, influencing, and in a way, caretaking over our planet with the inputs and influxes and shifts in the Schumann resonances. This is another theory that I've seen, as well as, and finally, relating activity to secret or otherworldly technologies. So again, these excitation moments in the Schumann resonances, some people believe that this is clues and hints that there are secret technologies stimulating our ionosphere and our atmosphere and our electromagnetic spectrum of Earth. And some of these technologies may even have been informed from beings beyond us, beings from civilizations that are more evolved than ours, as a simple way to put it. And that's another big passion of mine. And this conversation, I'm really glad that this is all weaving together, because personally, these things excite me very much and is a part of why I research these things. But it isn't a part of the popular science. So now that's why I included it, because I care very much about the esoteric and as well as the science of this, because I believe having both sides of it is a very balanced way to look at it, and also allows more comprehension, genuinely, of what this is and how to make it work for you and how to understand it. So the next question is, how do I read the Schumann resonance charts? This is why some of you are here. So let's do it. The top 3 popular sources that I use on my space weather update live streams, on my Instagram and blog posts on ascensiondiaries.com, they come from these 3 websites, these sources. There's a Russian website, there's an Italian website, and then there's heartmath.org, which has 6 locations measuring around the world, but they upload about 24 hours behind. The Russian and Italian sites are faster at uploading, so it's easier when you're having a physical experience in the present moment. Those websites are easier to check. The Russian is the best, in my opinion, for that. It updates the fastest. Those are the best ones to check when you're having an experience and you're like, maybe it's space weather. I would check the Russian site first. So here it is. Now, when you're checking the Russian site, it's in Russian. Spoiler alert, but it's in Russian. So I would recommend that you open it on a Google Chrome or install Google Translate into whatever browser you prefer, and allow Google to translate the page so you can actually navigate the page. So this is the general link I put up here. This is going to take you to the home page, and the The locations of the charts are here on the left-hand side, but you will need it, unless you speak Russian or something close to Russian, you will need to translate it to your language to be able to navigate this site. But once you get it up, you don't need to know. You don't need to worry about it. You know, it's just kind of that initiatory need. This site also is prone to blacking out or redacting data, which is, again, unfortunately, it's one of the fastest and most popular sites, but it's also clearly taking part in editing their data, their public data. And why would you edit public data? To edit public opinion. It's just, that's just the psychology of it, in my opinion. And so, just a warning about that, but still, sometimes it's a helpful source. Sometimes they don't black it out and you actually get to see something. But this year especially, or at least the last 12 months, I've seen the most blackouts of data I've seen this whole time. And so I think things are getting more intense, or they're hiding like some type of war, electromagnetic war that's happening over Russia is another theory I have. Like all of these frequency weapons that are heating up the atmosphere, or heating up the electromagnetic field by Russia, and it's heating it up in the extremely low range as well, which is again dangerous because that's where our brain waves hang out. So blacking out these really powerful blasts over Russia, it may hide literal attacks or literal influxes of energy that could be impairing your brain waves. So just so you know, that's why this is so important to mention. So the first chart that I'm going to cover is the frequency chart, because the first thing that we talked about was frequency. And then we're going to get into amplitude, and then we're going to get into the summary piece. This is the most popular one. So if you download the Schumann Resonance app on your phone, I know I've had email conversations with the developer of this app, and I have my Facebook page now, and my Instagram in this app, because I emailed and asked them, because I was like, I also had to help them edit the app because I literally labeled it wrong. And I had to be like, yo, you did this wrong. And now I know almost everybody I know has this app now. So, oh no, it's not letting me show it to you, but you guys are probably familiar. But anyways, the frequency chart is on this app. It's at the very bottom, unfortunately, of the main page, but it's one that I wanted to point out first because it kind of gives you the ground structure of how to understand the Russian interpretation of all of this. So let's get into it. As you can see here, there are 4 colors present on this chart, and they correlate with the first 4 Schumann resonance frequencies, which you may remember from the beginning. I read them off to you. There's about 6 of them, but these are the first 4. And so the first one is 7.83 hertz. Second one's around 14, third one's around 20, fourth one's around 23, 24. So this Russian site is specifically monitoring the behavior of these frequencies. And this is in a way very important because one of the biggest issues we're having in the community is people saying the frequencies of are rising. The Schumann resonance frequencies are rising. And that's what gets everybody in a stir. They're like, holy shit, what does it mean that the frequencies are rising? Are we, like it immediately, I feel like it gets people to panic, which is also why, that's clickbait. That's fear-based programming. That's fear-based advertising. And I don't agree with that. And that's why I'm here again. But I want to show you, let's talk about the white line in this chart. So if you can see on the left, you see a little F1, frequency 1. Then you can see some numbers. You can see those numbers all start with a 7 or an 8. So again, the 7.83 is an average of this particular, of our electromagnetic field. There's an average, but our electromagnetic field in our planetary sphere isn't a perfectly closed system. It's a little porous in a way. So sometimes this frequency kind of moves around. So that's why they take the average. But I have 2 things to show you here actually, because this is not the usual frequency chart. There's actually a portion here that's completely missing on the left-hand side. the left-hand side, you can see there's the lines start writing and then there's nothing. And then the lines begin to write again. And then on the right-hand side, you see there's also nothing, but that's just data that hasn't been entered yet. That's right up to the hour. When I took this chart, I took it from today. As you can see, the dates are at the top. You can see that it's filling in the 16th, and now in Russia, it's getting closer to the 17th there. And the data is filling in. On the bottom of the chart is the times. Bottom of the chart is in Tomsk, Russia time, which is Greenwich time +7. So, from the 0 point of our planet, it's 7 hours ahead of that. Or I guess after that, I should say, right? Man, I don't actually know. Either way, Russia, ironically, this point in Russia is exactly 12 hours away, or in time zone wise, from where I live on the planet. We live in the same hemisphere, but I live on the opposite side and I get the opposite time basically. So when it's 12 a.m. there, it's 12 p.m. here, for example. So you will need to convert when you just grabbing these raw off of the website, you will need to convert this yourself to your own time zone, but they'll tell you on the site. If you can't remember, it's right there on the website, right above the chart. It tells you what time zone it's in. But if you download the app automatically will tell you what time zone you're in and what time zone what Russia is in. So you can see the difference. Really helpful. Okay. And then, so we're looking at the white line. You're seeing that there's numbers between 7.2 and 8.3. And you can see there at the beginning, the actual frequencies were fairly high above 7.83. It looks like they were hanging around 8 and 8.3, which ironically is very unusual for me to see on these charts for the frequency chart. This is slightly above average behavior, slightly above 7.83 hertz behavior. I've seen it go to 8.8 hertz as the highest variance away from 7.83 on this chart specifically during some blasts a few years ago. But as you can see, it's in the higher range of its normal behavior, and then there's a blackout. And then it goes right back down when it starts up again to 7.64. And it hangs out more so around that range. It's like it completely stepped down in just that time to basically a whole other frequency than what it was vibing at earlier. So whatever occurred during this blackout, which I'll get to in a second, but whatever occurred in this blackout, it moved the frequencies of our Earth, of the primary Schumann resonance, a decent amount for its wiggle room space. From my professional eye, that's what I've noticed. Now you can see again, if you follow the yellow, which is beneath, the yellow information is on the right-hand side. It's frequency 2 or F2. Yellow hangs out around 14 hertz. But you can see again, it was actually in a lower range. It was hanging out around 12.7 before, or like 13 before the blackout. And then you can actually watch it rise back up after the blackout into a more normal range. The red was the third frequency. Again, you can see the behavior, and then the green. It's fun to watch the four frequencies because they actually do behave slightly different from each other. And the green one is is the most mysterious one I've noticed. So if you do like get off on these charts and like love the science of this, I would recommend you also check the frequencies whenever there's a blast. Check the frequency chart, because then you can see if the frequencies actually shifted and did actually rise slightly and during the blast. Because when the blast goes and the amplitude's super high of this specific frequency, that is likely the frequency that we are going to entrain to, because it's the loudest. So if it's 8.3 and it's super loud amplitude, then your brain might go to 8.3 when that blast comes in. And it just happens because of entrainment. Very fascinating. And that's why this science is so cool. But the best part about this blackout that I'm showing you is this is the very first blackout I have ever seen on Russian chart that is redacted information. So everybody saw the blast of this blackout right here that I'm showing you. Everyone in the community basically saw the blast, and then hours later, or a half a day later, that section of the chart got deleted. And I've never seen them do that before. What I have seen them do is before we see the chart load on the right-hand side, it just stops loading. And then it will begin loading again. So it leaves a hole. It leaves a hole in the chart instead of deleting and making a hole in the chart. It just doesn't update, and then it begins updating again. So it leaves time where there's no data available. And that's what was frustrating for me as a scientist, was then you could tell that they're just sitting at their facility and they're like, oh, there's a blast coming in. And they get a call from national security, whatever. They're like, yeah, this one's a little bit too spicy for the collective to know about. So why don't you just put a pause on that? Or just like, why don't you just black that one out and then we'll tell you when to put it back on, or something like that. Like, that's my fantasy. But this particular occurrence, they allowed that blast to be seen and recorded by many, many people in the community. And then they went back and deleted it and just took it out. And that, to me, it was censorship. Yeah, it was a much more, it was a much more tangible proof that they are censoring the data, which was huge for me. Yeah, it was huge for me because, again, so many people have had these theories that these blackouts are when we've just stopped time, where time has just stopped. The earth and everything has stopped vibrating and you just didn't remember it happened. And then hours later, it just turned back on. Sometimes the blackouts are really small and really brief. And so for those moments, you can go, oh, maybe that actually did happen. What could you delete that's in just within the 15 minutes of a whole hour being recorded? There's very thin black lines sometimes, very thin. And those are moments where you're like, well, maybe we did just pop in and out of existence during those, but during a 4-hour period, not so much plausible. So it was really nice because I've always had my doubts. I've always voiced my opinion, being like, this could also be deleted data, could be redacted data because they don't want us to see the truth. And now I have some major proof that that actually does happen. And it just made me feel so good. And I was very, very happy to see that. Also sad, but also happy. It was almost like a gift. It was like the Russians were like, here you go. Like, we're going to show you that we're doing this. And that's disclosure, in my opinion. It was like soft disclosure. I was very, very pleased. So let's move on to the amplitude chart. So the amplitude chart is my favorite chart out of all of them, because when we start seeing these white lines, and here you can see the blackout again, more deliberate, very obnoxious, and very obvious. But you see here, there's like some whiteness on the right-hand side there. That's a heightened amplitude moment, because this is like a thermograph. So like if you had a thermograph or a thermometer, or a, what are those called? Where you can see like heat signatures, and like when something has a heat signature, it's very white, and when something's really cold, it's very, very dark. That's what this is, a similar visual. So when, let's see, you see these white marks, that's when I go, well, let's go check the amplitude chart and see what happened. And in the first 4 frequencies of the Schumann resonance, there was heightened amplitude during that time. As you can see here on the bottom, the times line up: 20 hour 21, hour 22, hour 23, I guess hour 21 and hour 23 in Russia. And look at them. They look almost identical as well. These 2 blasts, they look very similar. So we see a lot of this too. And I'm going to get into this when we get to that chart. But for the amplitude, the most important figure, and the one that gets screwed up the most, and makes me cry for generations, just kidding, is how people interpret this chart and how they share this information. So again, you see a white blast, you go, oh my gosh, I want to know how powerful that was. Well, open your app and scroll to the amplitude chart, or go to the Schumann Bot Twitter page, or you can go, or no, yeah, Schumann Bot Twitter page posts this as well. They post both of these charts every hour. It's a bot. the guy who runs the page, he's quite a character, and he has a YouTube channel called Hermeticus, and he has this chart on a live stream now 24/7. So he figured out the coding that you needed to do that. I'm so glad. I thought I was going to be that person, I'll be honest. And then this person popped up out of nowhere and did it. And I was just like, thank you, thank you, thank you. Because man, coding is hard. Like I didn't know how to do it, and I had no idea. So I think the Schumann Resonance angels were like, we need another guy. We need this guy to do it, and sent me a coder, and sent us all a coder to like help us get these feeds, get these updates live, and spread the word. And I appreciate that person very much. I bought one of their T-shirts even because it's basically the same design as this, because really it's pretty much a simple design, but I'm really glad that person exists. And just shout out to you. Appreciate you. Whoever you are, I haven't even met this guy, but I'd love to. I'd love to pick his brain and see what he's like, because he has such a similar interest to mine. It's such a niche thing. It would be interesting to hang out with this person. Okay, so a blast comes in. You see it on your Twitter, you see it on the live stream, you see it in your app, you see it on social media somewhere. They're like, oh, there's a whiteout. Look, there's a picture of some white on this chart. Go to the amplitude chart, check out the white line. Again, the white line is the 7.83 hertz. It's the frequency 1. You can see here on the left, it says A1. It's the same thing. It's the first one. It's the 7.83 average frequency, right? A1, F1, A1. They're using the same setup. They're just measuring a different thing, a different quality of that frequency in a way. So go to A1, go check it out. See where those spikes go, how far up they go up the chart. And it'll show you on the top left. It'll automatically show you the top number, the top amplitude that those spikes reached. So the top amplitude that we saw these particular spikes is a 28. Which is pretty decent. I mean, not that high, but enough to get people like thinking and talking about it a little bit, worth a little bit of recognition. And then you can see the one on the right of it, that little spike, is slightly lower, maybe around a 25. It's kind of harder to read those ones because you kind of have to guess, because you can see there on the left, it says 22.8, and then it goes up to 28. So there's like a random, I know, there's a mathematical median there, and you just kind of have to eyeball it. So again, a lot of these sites, sometimes they're eyeballing the numbers that they share with you. They are eyeballing. So just so you know, not everything is fact, including myself. A lot of these numbers I have to say is sometimes I don't know exact numbers, which I tend to type out and mention as full disclosure and full transparency, but some people have chosen not to do that, and they have many, many followers now, and it's concerning to me on many levels sometimes, but I'm just doing what I can. And then you can see also the other frequencies. So let's look at that too. So the amplitude of the first frequency hit a 28. That's the way that I would prefer people say it. The amplitude, the primary frequency of the Schumann resonances hit a 28 today at blah, blah, blah time, which you can now see on the bottom of the chart. Thanks. Our slow cooker is beeping. Is it okay? Okay, okay. Thank you. So you can check that. And then nobody reports on the other frequencies either. They won't tell you what the secondary Schumann resonance, or the tertiary Schumann resonance, or the quaternary Schumann resonance is doing, or what amplitudes they reach. Most people don't report that. I do it once in a while, but as you can see, this is a rare occasion. Usually the primary frequency always hits the highest amplitude. As I've seen, it's almost always the highest, most powerful, potent one of the four. But in this particular case, in this particular blast, the secondary Schumann resonance was the highest one. As you can see there on the right, in the yellow, in the yellow numbers, the top number says 33. Great number. Great number, but also that's higher than 28, just slightly, but it is. So that again shows that somehow the secondary Schumann resonance was getting stimulated more than the first one. And so what is causing that? Why? These are great questions. I don't have the answers to those questions in this presentation, because I'm also not 100% sure on that. But Asking questions also means that you have a greater understanding of the concepts. So asking questions and not knowing the answers is still a lot better than no questions being asked at all, for sure, in fairness. Let's look at the red one. So let's look at the red numbers on the left. You can see it drastically reduced. Even though the waveform looks very similar between all 4 of these frequencies, it looks like it's spiked very similar. The red only reached an amplitude of 5.6, which is not very high at all. Very, very, very quiet. And then the green one hit 11.4, which is higher than 5.6, but it's the fourth frequency. So weird that the second and the fourth frequency, in a way, were higher than the ones above them, which is very strange to me. That is a very peculiar behavior. Really glad to add this into the presentation because this is also helpful when you do see weird things. Just take note of it. Take note of when it happens and take note of how you felt that day in specific, and maybe other factors like space weather and even military operations on Earth or radio network operations on Earth and things like that. Look into these other environmental factors, when you are doing this research. So yeah, very nice. Let's move on. Let's move on to the fun one. Finally, this is the Schumann Resonance Summary Chart. The y-axis, which is the one that goes up and down, for those of you who don't know, y-axis means the numbers or the information that's going up and down. And the x-axis is from left to right. Usually it's along the bottom of the chart, moving from left to right. So the y-axis of this particular chart starts at the top left, and there's a little symbol there in Russian, and that symbol is actually Hertz in Russian. So you can see on the top left there, you see 0.0, which again is dead, is death. There's no vibrating happening there. There's nothing happening there. It's dead matter, basically. Like it's dead space, it's dead air. So if you scan along the very, very top of the chart, you can see there's like there's darkness there. There's just a little bit of black because there shouldn't be any activity in 0 because it's impossible to have activity in 0. But the y-axis goes from 0 at the top down to 40 Hertz. So let's go back to our brain waves just for a second here. Brain waves. Okay, so here we are. This is our brain waves. That it goes from 0, like dead person, to gamma, basically gamma range, which is learning, heightened perception, REM sleep, arousal, of major arousal of like your brain activity. Like you're really getting some information going on. So we see on this chart a range of activity. It's basically just measuring this range, this electromagnetic range of 0 to 40 Hertz, in which the Schumann resonances preside in, as well as our brain waves. So this is a very important chart. It's nice to watch all the weird things that are going on in the range that is accessible to your brain. Very, very important. And I would like to just get into a couple of the weird anomalies I'm seeing on this chart because we've been watching these anomalies a while and they just keep coming. And so the x-axis of this chart, just like all the others, is time. That's the only thing that's just common throughout all these charts. The bottom is time, the top are the dates. But what they're measuring on the sides is different for each of the charts, obviously. So let's look. Now, 7.83 Hertz is the one that we're interested in to measure the Schumann resonance. As you can see on the left-hand side, where you can see the next number is 4 under 0, and then you can see 8. And so between 4 and 8, right near 8, you see this green kind of line that's stretching horizontally across the whole chart, which makes sense because, again, that's the Schumann resonance. So it's decently loud. It's decently loud over the background activity. It's very present. It's very prevalent there. And sometimes, like you can see on the blasts on the right, those blasts include the Schumann resonance. But those white blobs, those white you know, up and down blasts right there, you can see where they start. So go to the top of those white, go to the left of the chart, look at what number that is. So it could be around, I don't know, 2 hertz where it begins, and then track it down. The whiteness extends to about 13 hertz, and just from me eyeballing it by looking at it right now. So from 2 to 13 hertz during that time, which was about an hour, which you can see on the bottom, it spanned, the width of that white is about an hour long, maybe even under an hour. And you can see that it was an obvious moment of amplitude. It was an obvious moment of heightened activity of those frequencies. And then you see that it happened pretty much the exact same thing again, just a few hours later. Now, let's look at some other anomalies on this chart. Let's look at the bottom left. You can see that there's like an orangey kind of blob, and you can see around it, there's a lot of blue. So this thing just kind of blurted out randomly over a few hours at 32 hertz, which you can see the number on the left. It says 32. So at 32 hertz over Russia during that time of day on the 15th, it was randomly 32 hertz was just going off a little bit, getting a little loud in the charts. Why? We don't know. And ironically, 32 is out of range of the frequencies here. You can see here that the first 4 frequencies of the Schumann are lower than 32 hertz. So we cannot see the exact frequency behavior or the exact amplitude behavior of anything that's over the 4th frequency, which is around 23 hertz. So again, we're kind of left out to dry here with this data because we don't know how loud it got because the Russian chart won't tell us. It's just not available there. Unfortunately, but it's true. Another frustration with this chart. Again, you can also see here on the amplitude chart, there's no units for what amplitude they're measuring. On this chart, it shows you the units in top left of what the y-axis is measuring. This one, no. They're like, oh, you don't need it. Frequency is a little bit easier, you know, that's easier to Google, but with amplitude, you need to know because there's multiple ones you can do. Like I said, you could do decibels, you could do microvolt, you can do picotesla. It's what I've read online, which is now no longer online. So this is a very weirdly like suppressed part of the science. It's very strange, but worth noting. Let's look at one more anomaly here. So do you see around mid-length of this chart, there's just a very tight looking green line. And you can see if you track that green line to the left, it hangs out at 20 hertz. Well, 20 hertz is in the range of what we're measuring going on here. A little bit. You can see 20 hertz hanging out. It's constantly there. But its amplitude is not that loud compared to others. So it's interesting that it just kind of solidly chills there, but it must be louder. It must be louder than the background frequency or amplitude. So you still see it. Also around 24 hertz, you see these little dots that are going horizontally across the chart. Don't see those very often. It almost looks like markers, like a little frequency marker where they just went meep and like made the sound of 24 hertz above Russia, just like real quick, beep, and like decently amplified enough that it shows up on the chart. Some people say that they want to make music where they can actually hear what this looks like. You know what I mean? So imagine you had a program where you could just press play and just hear like the static of what these frequencies would sound like. But again, some of these frequencies are out of range of our brain, of our ears. So they'd have to times them or multiply them up or like go to the next octave or whatever. They would have to do that math like they do with the solfeggio frequencies. They'd have to times it by something. And all of these terms, they'd have to times them by something so everything is in range of our ears. But that's not hard. That's pretty simple math in a way. Again, I'm not a programmer. I've never made these kinds of things. But if this is striking a nerve in you, people have been asking. People have been asking me for years. They're like, well, you could just make that into music. And I'm like, yeah, great. Go ahead. Because I'm like, I don't know how to do that. Looks like a little bit of work, but sometimes a little bit of work just for one person, and it goes a long way for the community. So I'm glad if that's going to be you and you need any help, I'd be happy to help. I'd be happy to share that resource with people because they've been asking for it. So yeah, these are the Russian charts, very popular. Now we're going to get into the Italian charts, and then after this we're going to take a little break, okay? Just because I know I'm giving you a lot. So the Italian site has grown in popularity like crazy, like over the last couple of months, because there was a huge reading, which I have included in this slide right here. There's a huge reading where everything went red on the chart instead of white, because again, the intensity of this chart is where it turns red. The intensity of this chart is where it turns white. It's a similar style of chart and visual. But yeah, there was a huge reading on the Italian site. There was a huge amount of activity that day over that Italian location, which you can see here on the left. You see Italy, that boot-shaped island up on the top left, right up against the mountains there, those snowy capped mountains. That's where this particular site is. So it's nice actually that they're by the mountains, because mountains, in my opinion, attract electromagnetic energy. And so they're actually getting more intel, I think, than they might in other areas. Or not. But at least they may also be far away from like a civilized area. So background electromagnetic crap from cities and people is less influenced on these charts. They can get more of a pure sense of what's going on in the environment instead of, or in the natural environment instead of in the artificial one. So yeah, this is what it looks like. That's the website title. If you don't know it, there you go. You can find it. That's what it looks like when you first get there. And then there's 3 charts on this site that I want to share with you, that how to read them. So 3 of these charts, 1, 2, 3, very similar in what they're showing us. But what's different between them is the hertz, the range of hertz that they're showing us. Like here, 0 to 40 is what the Russian one shows us. But in the Italian site, they have 3 different ones. So the first one here is, it goes from 0 to 15,000 hertz. Pretty big range, pretty big range. But actually it does 2 different measurements here. So as you can see there in the middle, there's like a line that's horizontally going across. That's the 0 point of the first chart. And then there's the one underneath. So this one's a little tricky to read, but you'll get it. The one at the top, it goes from 0 to 15,000 hertz. It measures that behavior. The one on the bottom measures 0 to 1500 hertz and measures that specific area more closely. It's like a zoomed in version. You know what I mean? So the first one, the one near the top, the larger chunk there in the middle with all the green and the blue, that one is, you know, a bigger, more zoomed out picture, what's going on frequency wise. And then the one underneath is a little bit smaller. So this chart I also just took also looks really weird. There's a lot going on here that doesn't look natural. It looks very digital, looks very, not normal. Actually, if you look really closely in the very center top, right under that little -50 little marker, if you look down into like the blue area, you can actually see a square in the readings. It's created a picture. There's actually a couple pictures going on up there in the higher frequencies there. There's some circles and a square and some, now we're seeing some dashes, some dashed lines, and then it gets even weirder. So that's the y-axis. That's the first y-axis. Now there's another y-axis next to it on the right. You see, if you have to turn your head this way a little bit to kind of read it, but you see that red and yellow line that's kind of jaggedy and on that gray background. Now, if you look really closely near the 0 of both, or near the bottom of the y-axis of both of these charts, you can see numbers. And what it says is -80 decibels, -60 decibels, -40 decibels, -20 decibels. So when you get above -20, that's when you start hearing things actually. So this is kind of cool. So there might be blasts where you actually can hear, you'll actually see that you were actually able to hear them, which is kind of cool. But decibels is a way to measure amplitude of sound waves. So that's a way to measure the intensity of it. So that's kind of cool. So let's look at that. Let's look at the very top of that jaggedy red and yellow line. You can see that there's a little peak there, and it lines up right next to, in between 13,000 and 14,000 hertz. And that area, that's where those dashed lines that are going horizontally across, that's the frequency that they're hanging out in. And the decibel level that it's reaching, it looks like, is around either 80 or I guess 60 decibels possibly, negative 60 decibels. Again, underneath ear range, but still there. And it's decently peaked over the rest of the activity. I'm also seeing like a red dot, and I've never seen a red dot on there before. So I don't know what that is. But the red dot in that gray area on the right-hand side is kind of lining up with that red dot that's blasting around 15 or 5,000 hertz. If you can see that red mark that's on the chart there, it's just kind of all it's there and then it's not there. It looks like an input in a way. It looks more digital to me. So this to me is more about, these are the frequency technologies that you can just turn on and turn off. You can't turn on and turn off the Schumann resonances of a planet unless you like destroy the planet and then or go back in time and then turn it back on or something like that. Like, this is more mechanical in my opinion, these readings. But then you see the chart on the very bottom there, the smaller one, the less thick one that goes from 0 to 1500 hertz. Again, you can see that there is that disturbance there, but there's no red lines, and you see the decibels are kind of hanging out, but they're still under a normal range. We don't see much redness here because at the top there, you see the little temperature gauge. When it gets to minus 50 decibels towards 0 decibels, which is again moving into the being able to audibly hear it. Unfortunately, there isn't like a color change for when it goes into hearing range. It just goes to minus 50 and then the rest of it's just red. And to me, again, that's not science. You know, you need to have a little bit more colors there, in my opinion. And so that's my complaints. If you're watching right now, please make that a different color. When it goes into audible range, make it go a different color. That would be awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Italy. And along the bottom, the x-axis is time. So you can see the numbers of time there. And again, the time is measured from this particular site. So it's not in your time, it's in Italian time, just so you know. So yeah, this is a complex one. This one is kind of an overview picture. They call it VLF monitoring, very low frequency monitoring. Weird anomalies, but things are getting weird these days, so it's not really that surprising, I'll be honest. So let's get into the next one. So this is the one that also measures, it measures in a way, what's the word I'm looking for here? I can't read it, 1 second. Okay. It's a geophone. I copied and pasted this directly from the site, so I don't have it memorized yet. I just wanted to look. Okay, so this is the second one. So you get on the site, you scroll down, you see this chart first, and then you get to this chart next. Very similar. It's all, in a way, it's all the same data. The timing and the times of these two charts are perfectly aligned. As you can see there on the bottom, those little black times, if you tilt your head and look at them, they're at the exact same position of the first chart, so that helps. And here we go with a blackout on the Italian site, which is something I haven't seen in a little bit. You can see there on the right, there's like a black line up and down. There's just a random time where there's just no data, except for, it looks like that red line that cuts across the middle did show up there. So that's kind of strange. That's not a total blackout of data because there's red in that black line. Interesting, interesting. I just got these. These are recent. These are recent readings, and weird stuff's going on. I mean, they blacked it out in Russia, and now it looks like they maybe blacked out something in Italy. but not fully, which is an interesting touch. But I will direct your attention to that red line because the y-axis of that area, of that bottom chart, which is that green and blue area, that is measuring only 0 to 100 hertz, 0 being the bottom, 100 being the top. And then the charts above them are measuring a smaller range, even from 0 to 30 hertz, the activity there. And then the one at the very top is one I don't actually know how to read fully. So sorry, I don't quite get that yet. I just started investigating this, but I'm giving you what I can. So let's look on the bottom chart again. You see that horizontal red line. You see that it's hanging out at 50 hertz. This is an anomaly that I've been seeing over this Russia chart consistently. So there's a device near this station that is giving off 50 hertz consistently over days and days and days. And I haven't seen it without it. I have yet to see it without it. And you can see there in the decibel area or the amplitude area, it's going right below audible levels. So in a way, in my opinion, that's pretty pervasive to the human body. That's pretty pervasive in the environment, that particular frequency at that location in Italy. Again, do we want to go back and look at the brain waves? 50 hertz, that's up in gamma range. 31 and up is kind of where you go into gamma. Oh, excuse me. But 50 hertz is an interesting one. It's an interesting one for sure. So keep your eye out for that. Clearly there's something going on over Italy. Russia and Italy, both previously governed by, or I don't even know if it's previous, but they've had some dodgy history with politics and with what they rule their people with. So interesting that they're giving us public data about their electromagnetic field over their countries and what they're doing to their people potentially, or what their people are enduring. Maybe they're not doing it, but they're receiving it. Who knows? Who knows the drama? But the drama's here. I can see the drama. Many questions to be asked, more than 25 questions. But usually what we do measure is when the red stretches from the bottom of the chart upward. So going from around 0 hertz and stimulating up towards whatever. And in this chart, the example chart is from that time, you see on the right, when you see that red line that's horizontal, it's still there, 50 hertz plowing through, but you can also see the red going all the way past 100 hertz, all the way past the top in that one. That's when people got really hyped. They saw that it went, and they looked on the other charts, the charts that measure a larger range, like these guys, and they were seeing like I'm pretty sure they got up to 300, that one. And so on all over the social media, I saw this chart with power of 300 or amplitude of 300. And I was just like, no, that's not accurate at all. You're completely wrong, unfortunately. And that sucks because now this post has 100 likes or 3,000 likes. And I'm just like bashing my head against the scientific wall. Like, oh, dang it. Like, that's not right. So I did what I could to talk about it. I made some memes and kind of made fun of it because I'm so tired of the clickbaity insanity that I'm watching in the space weather, because it really muddles the truth. And I'm not about that. Like, we've had the truth muddled enough. Please and thank you. Please have mercy on us. Please, for real. So watch for this chart. Watch for when red creeps up, and then you can check on the site and you can see, oh, maybe the red, like it did here, goes past 100 on the second chart. So you just go to the first chart because it has the biggest range that you can find and see really how high it did go, like what hertz, not frequency or not amplitude or power, but what hertz was stimulated that to that decibel level. You know what I mean? Because red means it goes from minus 50 decibels and up. That's what red means. So minus 50 decibels and up, still under audible range. Just because this is all red, it just meant that it was 50 decibels and up, that stimulation, that amplitude of 0 to 100 or 0 to 300 hertz. That's it. It's not it's not a power of 300. No, because the power is measured in amplitude and the amplitude is measured in decibels. And the decibels here clearly were not going above much above 50. Like it was kind of misleading, unfortunately, that excitement. And the third chart here, this is like a monthly chart. I'm pretty sure it covers, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23 days, almost a whole month view of this chart. This one here on the bottom, basically. And this one's actually measured in even a smaller amount of hertz. So you can only see what goes on between 0 and 50, it looks like 0 and 60 maybe, 0 and 60 hertz. Each of these little squares vertically from the bottom go from 0 to 60 hertz. So you can see the behavior in the redness and the decibel levels slightly from this chart. It's more of an overview. It's more of a summary in a way. Sometimes, again, the hertz are going to be stimulated that are higher than 60. So on this chart, the red's going to go blasting right past the top of the squares. And that's fine. Again, just go back, go to the site, go to the first chart on the site that you see when you scroll down and check really how high it did get. And if it blasts past the roof of this one, then you got yourself an anomaly, because I haven't seen that yet. But again, it's just talking about hertz, the range of hertz that are being tickled. It doesn't talk about, and that those hertz are being tickled to at least negative 50 decibels. And that's really all that you get to know. But it helps because it shows there is stimulation happening. That's really what people want to know. Are we being stimulated extra? Yes? No? Okay. What does the blackout mean? Even though I'm still feeling like I'm overstimulated, but I can't see it on the chart. Well, it probably means that there is a blast on that chart, but it's being deleted, unfortunately. Okay, here's another one that I unfortunately have some gripes with most of these sources. I don't have the perfect source yet. I'd love to build my own antenna in the backyard, but so far, haven't had that opportunity. But let's look at heartmath.org. So this one, even weirder. This one I use the least because I cannot screenshot it on my phone because it won't load the whole image when you're on your phone. Like, they haven't made their website so it doesn't crop properly to the phone, or like the mobile desktop or whatever it's called. You know what I mean? Like the mobile view of their website is a little bit odd. So it's harder for me to share this data online because I can't screenshot it and share it. I'd have to do it directly from my computer, which I'm doing more now with the blog. So this one is bizarre because, again, there's no units of measurement of amplitude, but the numbers are totally high and all over the place. So this is another one gets people excited and they're like, wow, hit 619. And you're like, what? What did? And they're like, well, the Schumann. You're like, okay, I need more data than that actually. But this is the website that might be feeding some of that information, honestly. Heartmath.org. It measures heart-brain coherence. So that's why they also care about the Schumann resonances. How strange. So this is the chart that's called the magnetometer. On the left-hand side of the y-axis there, if you tilt your head, it says power. So instead of any units, it just says power, which again is a physics term, but I don't know if that's what they actually mean, if they mean that unit specifically, because it personally doesn't make sense to me if that's the case. But you see that it measures the power of 0.3 hertz to 36 hertz, which is the range of the Schumann resonances. We saw that in the beginning of this presentation. So it is measuring the specific area where the Schumann resonances are dancing around. But again, there's some confusion here. So the power, which you can now see is 0, 200, 400, 600. You can see they're on the left-hand side on the y-axis. That's just there. Those numbers are just there. I can't tell you. I can't even compare them to other sources because I don't know what units they're in. That's the hard part. I can't compare any of these sources because I don't know what units most of them are measuring, except for the Italian site. I don't know what the Russian, and I don't know what the heartmath.org site is measuring their power in, what units they're measuring it. So these numbers are a bit arbitrary and hard to compare. And that's a big part of science, is that you make science so people can compare it to other science. That's why you label things. Fun fact. Okay, so this particular site measures 6 locations, which is why it's interesting to me. You can see on the bottom of that picture, it says site key, and you see California, Saudi Arabia, Lithuania, Canada, New Zealand, and now South Africa. All these cities and all these countries all over the world are being measured, all 6 places. Unfortunately, Saudi Arabia very much likes to just not provide their data, so there's major blackouts there all the time. It's just a heads up. And South Africa is often the most powerful, is another thing I wanted to tell you, fun facts about this. So when you move your cursor along all those colored lines, it actually holds up this little square bubble, and it'll show you the date and the time and the power of those 4 places. I guess they're adding up the power of the frequencies of 0 to 36. Like it's kind of even confusing there. I think that must be what they're doing, adding the amplitudes of all of those frequencies together. And that's how they're coming up with this number. Maybe. So that's interesting. But again, you can see all those locations, they all have different numbers, and that South Africa is way up. It's way up compared to all of them, which I've seen over and over. And I've have people who follow me from South Africa because I think it's because they literally just get more Schumann resonances and stuff there. And it's just in their minds more, it's in their collective consciousness more. I'm not from South Africa, I've never been there. And so it's on the opposite side of the world from me, but I have a good audience from there because they feel these Schumann resonances because according to heart math, they're getting a lot of it. They're getting a lot of the strength there. They have a lot of lightning there, and they have a lot of socioeconomic turmoil and intensity there. So a major shift, a major area of brain wave and emotional disturbance. I just wanted you to know that. So yeah, the x-axis is time, y-axis is power of 0 to 36 hertz. And this one is good if you want to check the Schumann a day after, because it uploads 24 hours late. Here's another one that they upload, which is a correlating chart. Again, the 6 locations, you can see GC1, you can see on the right-hand side, the y-axis is those 6 locations. And the site keys on the bottom there, you can still see the locations. You can see on the bottom chart there, the horizontal line, GCI 6, that's South Africa. Lots of blasts there. You can see a lot more intensity there. Again, there is not a legend to help me know maybe what decibels that is or whatever other amplitude factor. There's no help there. Only x-axis info we have is the date. And you can see there on GCI2, there's like a horizontal line. So that's like a frequency that's just buzzing. And then there's blackouts too. And so here it's basically just a general look. It's much more general. You cannot get as much data from this, but it does help in a way. If other sites are down or you want to look back on another date, potentially at a certain location. If you live at any of these locations, I used to live at one of these locations. So that was super interesting to me because I think where I lived was also a place under investigation as possibly a large grid point where this energy is grounding. It is on the world. Like if you look at the grid of the world that people have made, where I grew up is one of the big grid points in North America. And so you guys probably are born near one of those too. Just check it out. All right, where's my break? Am I not getting a break yet? Oh, here we go. Break's coming. Okay, actually I need a break right now. So we're gonna take a break. I know this is going on a little long, but I'm being thorough, which is usually my plan. I'm just gonna look at the comments. So please take some breaths, think a little bit, go for a pee break, have something to drink, and we're gonna get back into it in a little bit, and I'm gonna read some comments. So let's just stop and share. I'm gonna read the comments a little bit. I'm gonna read them for all of you. So people watching this on the playback, I'm gonna see if there's anything here that we can talk about while everyone else kind of takes a break. because you guys are on the playback, and just pause if you need a break. So pause if you need a break now. Otherwise, I'm going to start reading these comments and see if there's anything in here that all of us might enjoy knowing or hearing. All right, taking notes, taking notes. Getting zapped. Yeah, you're feeling zapped today? The lightning strikes are akin to synapses firing in the brain. Yes, I really do agree with that. That's a really great comment. Thank you very much. Yes, I believe that very much. And I do believe they do say that the Schumann resonances on, like, even on NASA, I think they say the Schumann resonances are like the heartbeat of the Earth. And in my opinion, I think a proper label for them more so is the brain waves of the Earth, because it's, again, above the surface. That's kind of where our cerebral area is all of our electromagnetic field of our brain activity hangs out right above our head, like that. And again, like the lightning strikes causing this constant hum of the Earth electromagnetic frequency in our atmosphere. These lightning strikes are like thoughts being injected into the ground from space, from cosmic weather. And so the cosmos is like one neuron, and our Earth is like another neuron, and they're like having a communication through lightning. And I've had that visual so many times, which is also why I love this topic. And I thought it was so cool, because I could see the micro versus, or the micro and the macro of this situation was very normal and very like akin to how nature operates. And so, again, very, very interesting. Thank you for that comment. That's awesome. Both created by potential energy. Yep. Oh, someone asked, does the Schumann resonance fluctuate like on the spacecraft, like on Earth? That's a good question. I thought about that too, because the technology to mimic the fluctuations of the Schumann resonance may have to take into account the environment that you grew up in, which was more than the Schumann resonances, or was these artificial injections and artificial stimulations from Earth technology that your body got used to. And did they include those in the program of the Schumann resonance, song device or whatever that they put in these space stations? I don't know. I do wonder that, though. Like, how complex did they have to make it for people to feel comfortable in that environment versus being at home? It's a good question. I'm glad you mentioned that. I've thought about that a few times myself. It could be used to manipulate their moods, keep them from space madness, or vice versa. Who decides what frequency they will have? Yes, that's another really great question. Really, really love that. Seriously, that's a great question. I've had these thoughts as well. And most definitely think that they've been doing experiments like that on people in space. Like you say, they go out there and they do tons of experiments in space. So that could definitely have been on the schedule, or is continually on the schedule for them. So fluctuations vary around the world. Is there an American resource? Yes, in a way there is. The heartmath.org website has a California location, but I've noticed that it's not very active and it doesn't give a lot of readings. And again, it updates 24 hours late. There might be a publicly updating one, like they have the Russian style out there, but I've never found it. And you'd think, because most of the people who are sharing this are in North America, they probably would gravitate towards the North American one. But it also makes you ask that question: why do they not have that as a public resource? Maybe it's because war, like operational security, not panicking your slave populace, things like that. These things are changing now because us as a populace are demanding these knowledges. So I think that they're just going to play the heroes and be like, well, here you go, maybe one day, and give us an American one. Every country can have one, or every city. Honestly, like the Weather Channel and the weather stations, weather is different everywhere. but they have a weather channel in every city basically, and a weather person in every city. And they could train these people not only to just do the weather, but also do the space weather and read the ionosphere inputs and stuff. They could easily teach people that. Those people are smart enough to get it there. If you can be a weather person, I think you can handle it. So putting that out there in the universe, maybe in the future, that's what we're going to see. And maybe that'll be what I do but I'm doing it myself. I'm doing it on my YouTube channel anyways. I don't need a news network to pay me, but maybe one day if news networks smarten up, maybe I'll do that work, because I think it'd be fun. It could be fun. Even though weather people tend to like have crazy schedules, have to be very present with their audiences. So I'm not much for schedules. So I'll be the like guest anchor once in a while, maybe. I don't know. I'll be teaching all the weather people. How about that? All right. Our emotions are already affected by nano, which is AI and non-human. Yes, there's a whole theory about the nanotechnology that's been inserted into people through food, through the air particles, through vaccinations, and so on. That's a big topic that people are very concerned about. And I know a lot of people who have deliberately attempted to remove these things from their body through foot soaks, electromagnetic, like foot bath soaks, where it like pulls the charge out of your body, or like pulls them out of your body magnetically, and whatever. And I've seen people go on intense diets to help move the nanoparticles out of their system, like raw vegan diets that are just like plant-based, and a lot of really, really clean water, and just letting your body just work it out of itself over many years. It could take like 7 years more to get that stuff out of you. But 7 years of your life eating really healthy and clearing yourself of all these things, if you think you are having an issue, is definitely worth it. And you will see results very soon. You won't have to wait 7 years to see results. But also be careful how fast you detox your body, because that can also cause side effects sometimes, because your body gets, overstimulated and thrown off and so on. So good comment. Good comment. They have supercomputers that monitor the Earth's frequencies, rich control freaks. I also agree with that. I definitely think that they have that capacity. That technology's for sure been made. Where in California are they recording these readings? It doesn't say. I don't believe it says at all. So unfortunately, that doesn't help. But that's all your comments so far. If you guys are all chilling, vibing here, you want to keep going? Let's move this right along. My phone is buzzing nonstop. I think the Telegram group chat is just popping off. I'm now in multiple group chats too, with other people's YouTube channels, like other friends of mine who've been censored and so on. So there's a lot of chatter going on all day, every day. I try and keep up. My chatter is usually about space weather. That's my skill. That's why I'm in the group. All right, so let's get back into it. I want to share with you a few more things. All right, we're pretty close. We're like 3/4 of the way done, I think. Okay, so the next question I have asked is, what is PEMF? PEMF. PEMF stands for pulsed electromagnetic frequencies. Pulsed electromagnetic frequencies. They are used in healing technologies, they are used in wartime technologies, and they're used in communication. There's uses for them in other ways, I'm sure, but these are some of the ones that I know about and could talk about today. So first of all, I want to show you the picture here on the right. This is an advertisement for a device that is a portable PMF system. And so this device has a little pad connected to a string, connected to a little console, a little device, basically. And you put the pad on your head, and this thing will pulse electromagnetic frequencies through this little pad right towards your neurons, wherever you place it, and that can stimulate that particular, it can stimulate your brain waves. And so this particular technology advertises that they can help stimulate dead or dying neural tissue. So that's nice. So pulsing it with electromagnetic frequencies gets the cells to twitch, the neurons to twitch a little bit, and it can bring some life back into areas. Like if you're a stroke victim, or if you've had brain damage or something like that. And a lot of people have gone through brain damage through sports, through health issues, and so on, through vaccinations as well. I've noticed is another big one. The brain has been an aim of the game, So they also advertise that if at certain frequencies, and if you would put it near your amygdala or whatever, you can actually stop your cravings of eating. So if you're obese and you have an issue because potentially, you've got a feedback error and your neural pathways are a little too tight, and it's like the only thing that your body wants to do is eat and eat and eat. This is helpful because if you just pulse this thing on your back of your head when you're hungry, hey, that sensation to eat, I guess, will go away. Now, this can be used for people who also are bulimic and have eating disorders and do not want to eat, and they could use this, but eventually, you're going to starve to death. But that's your choice. Again, you get to have that choice with these technologies. So I'm just saying it's a double-edged sword, this kind of technology, because it's fluffy, yay, we're helping people with brain damage, but also we can stop you from eating with it, or stop you from wanting to eat, or whatever else. Maybe even could stop you from seeing. Like, who knows what this thing could actually do and override in your brain activity. It's definitely worth conversation. So there, in a way, this is kind of like a disclosure of what they can do with pulsed electromagnetic waves, whether you're consenting to them or you're not. And maybe even they may consider you consenting to them by just living in range of their pulsed electromagnetic frequency generator device. And that's just your choice. You get to live near it. And you can just move if you want to get away from it. And that's like, no, that's not good. That's some bad karma. We do not want to be doing that to people. But unfortunately, I think that has been happening. But also I think there's an intelligent force also stopping it from happening to a certain degree, which I always believe. There is a benevolence there. There is a desire to maintain life on this planet. There is major investments, I think, on this planet. So that's why military budgets are so high, I think, because they're basically in a way trying to protect their life and their way of life from other sources of, other agendas out there that want to take over or utilize that life for their own needs or their own agenda. So let's talk about other areas where pulsed electromagnetic frequencies are being used. Let's talk about HARP. I just heard that echo from the other room. I said that pretty loud, but it's true. HARP is a publicly known project. It was, and this is a copy and paste from my old presentation, but this HARP stands for High Frequency Active Auroral. Sorry, I gotta turn off my notifications. This is crazy. Everybody's losing their mind in the group chat. My phone just won't stop. There we go. It's still going. I only turned all of the things off. Okay. Anyways, HARP is one of the most publicly known of these types of technologies, but it is said that probably every other country that wants satellites or to continue evolving with the technology boom, they probably had something like this. And I honestly think as well that this technology may be a little bit outdated by now. But I'm going to tell you what it is anyways, because we at least lived in the time where I think this was affecting us, or potentially, you know what I mean. So what is HARP? It is a high frequency active auroral research program. Was initiated as an ionospheric research program jointly funded by the Air Force, the U.S. Air Force, the U.S. Navy, the University of Alaska, and the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, also known as DARPA. It was designed and built by BAE Advanced Technology. Its original purpose was to analyze the ionosphere and investigate the potential for developing ionospheric enhancement technology for radio communications and surveillance. You know, nobody even listens to radio that much. You know, they're not talking about us listening to AM, FM radio. This is military. And okay, so yeah, HARP is a high power, high frequency transmitter used for study of the ionosphere. So again, high power, high frequency, those are both big deals. And ionosphere, which is the top layer, or basically the cell wall in a way of our Schumann resonance situation. So if they're making that cell wall less dense, they're poking holes in that cell wall to talk to their satellites and so on, then we got a problem, because again, that is not normal. That is not natural. That is not what the Earth designed for itself. These are influences that are happening over top. Hi, sis. She's upset. She's not a fan. So there are HARP transmitters on the ground, and these transmitters release high frequency radiation. Basically, they send radio waves up towards the ionosphere, and the heat affects and it creates irregularities in the electron density. So this is the holes in the cell wall that I'm talking about, and it allows communication signals from satellites to be relayed off of the ionosphere. So in a way, the satellites can talk from out there back in here to us through these holes that we're making from the surface. So we're making holes from the surface by heating up and messing with the electron density of our cell wall. So a technology that's floating outside the ionosphere can reach our satellites and reach us and hear from us. And also they're doing it so the satellites on Earth can bounce signals off of that electron dense layer in a certain way. So yeah, that's a big deal. That's a lot of stuff, and they have these arrays all over the place. And I'm going to get into the next slide now, which is the next question, which is, what is mental manipulation? So again, this is copied from my last class, but there you can see some pictures of the HARP arrays on the ground. They're deliberately just there, and they're just meant to like beam up radio waves and like make holes in the ionosphere above them. So I'm going to read this. I'm going to read this quote. So Gordon J.F. McDonald, specialist in problems of warfare, says accurately timed, artificially excited electronic strokes, or pulsed waves, basically, could lead to a pattern of oscillations that produce relatively high power levels over certain regions of the Earth. So again, these arrays will hit the ionosphere with some high frequency stuff and get things a little bit stimulated up there. And that over top of that, just that one area being overstimulated will permeate out over a whole country sometimes. You know, depending on the size of the country, that could be very serious. That could be everybody being involved. You know what I mean? Some countries are pretty tiny. But it says, in this way, one could develop a system/weapon that would seriously impair the brain performance of a very large population in selected regions over an extended period of time. So, is it possible that they have this technology where they could beam it over top of an adjacent country that maybe they're warring with and just mess with their brainwaves super hard by just buzzing the area that, you know, informs their brainwaves, basically? And it says US Air Force documents reveal that a system had been developed for manipulating and disrupting human mental processes through pulsed radio frequency radiation. So it's not that cute anymore. It's a little bit more serious. Okay, pulsed radio frequency radiation, the stuff of HARP. Again, over large geographical areas. So this is why I believe I was really called to do this, because I believe that this atrocious act against humanity was a major issue during the time of this development on Earth. Like during this technology boom where this did get implemented, I feel, and who knows, this could have happened in World War One, when they started doing this. So the war about this and like kind of getting it under wraps and control probably already happened. Maybe happened before I was even born, very likely. But it was a big problem, and it is very big potential. And it also shows the potential of what, doing these things and these pulsed electromagnetic frequencies and radiation can do to a whole populace, a whole geographic area. That's pretty insane. Am I right? That's some science for you right there. So, is there more? Is there more? Yes. Technology has advanced far beyond public knowledge. The people who are military insider whistleblowers of this technology constantly mention over and over that the military is like 30 years ahead of us technologically, and just with overall what they're using, what science they know, what science they're implementing, what tech they're using. They're way ahead of the public sphere, and that is what in my opinion, the big fun part of being alive during this time is that I think that the military and these breakaway private groups have reached a certain level where now they can't move forward until we are informed to a certain degree about these technologies. And so this stuff has to be released to us, and it is slowly, like these phones that we have or whatever. Like that is, in my opinion, this is released technology from these programs that they're now allowing us to use, and in a way they were using it against us in a lot of ways too. So it's the technology fun. It's been a dicey ride, I think, in the universe, and it's a big part of developing as a civilization. Is there more? Yes, your body's field can sense these disturbances. So again, even though I'm telling you all of this, there's stuff I don't know, and there's technologies I don't know and I don't understand yet. But what I do know is the technology that I'm living and breathing in enjoying every day, which is my body. And they say that the human body is one of the most amazing technologies in the universe, like because of its ability to perceive and its ability to create. And so I believe that a lot of my audience, even if they don't see things on the chart, including myself, and they still feel it, doesn't mean that there isn't something happening. Doesn't mean that there isn't a chart out there that's possible, or an antenna out there that could pick up the readings for you to physically see, but your body's already doing it. These charts are, in a way, a biofeedback a biofeedback device. So they use biofeedback, like they will hook you up to a EKG or your heart EKG or whatever. I don't remember. EKG is for your brain or for your heart? EKG, I think, is for your heart. I don't know why I'm forgetting that. I literally had to take classes about it, but sometimes things from university just go boop and they disappear. But that's okay. It'll come back. It's in there somewhere. But either way, there's machinery that they can hook you up to. There's machinery that will show you your own brain waves on a screen, and they use that as a biofeedback. So they say, hey, you're stressed out. Now you can see on the screen your stressed out brain waves. And then you go, okay, finally, there's a motivation. It's almost like a video game. And you breathe, and you breathe a couple times, and then your brain waves seem to calm down. And they use that as a medical tool to help people deal with their issues that they have. It's another visual aid to help you understand and take control and manage your symptoms a lot better. And that's what I've used the Schumann Resonance Charts and space weather stuff for too, is to help do that. So when you're having an experience, you can look on these charts and see if there is disturbances and where the disturbances are coming from. And then you can start to understand, like, oh, when my stomach starts to turn, that actually means that we're getting a lot of solar wind, because it happens every time. Or when my neck is sore, that means there's solar wind coming in. Or hey, something like that. That's how me and my audience have worked with this stuff. And as a practitioner, as a therapist, as a doctor of, this stuff. It's important. So in my opinion, you should check space weather first and then investigate other sources. If your body is sensing a disturbance and there's nothing in your immediate environment that makes sense why your neck is all of a sudden really hurting, check space weather as the next thing. And I guarantee you might find something. So let's do that. So what is space weather? Space weather to me is solar winds, solar flares, coronal mass ejections, sunspots, and other cosmic radiation. So as well as like supernovas and galactic cosmic rays and so on, like you can see in this picture here. There's a lot of rays and frequencies coming at our planet all the time from outside of our atmosphere. So the first one is, what is solar wind? Solar wind is a stream of charged particles that's constantly coming at us from the sun. The average solar wind speed is about 400 kilometers per second. The slow solar wind, which is around, 300, 200 usually, it comes from the equatorial belt. So that's around the center of the sun usually. Like that's just kind of what's hitting us. It's just like it's just hitting us all the time around that speed. And then faster winds come from the coronal holes. So this is when you start checking the solar wind, because you'll see on the charts and on the graphs online on the space weather on my live streams and stuff, hey, there's a giant dark hole opening up on the sun that allows solar wind to come out at a higher speed because there's less magnetic strength on it. There's less of a magnetic hold on it. So it's like a hole opens up and all this air or these particles are able to stream out faster because there's less of a hold on them, pulling them back towards the sun. Very cool. These are colder, darker zones. Usually there's coronal holes at the poles, at the top and the bottom of the sun disk all the time. And then sometimes, like the one in the picture, there's just a massive one that opens up right on in the middle of it, right on around across the equator of it. And that's when we get solar storms. That's when we start to see the solar wind getting a little bit too high. And that's when people start getting soreness. Slow and fast solar winds can be completely interrupted by a CME, or a coronal mass ejection. A coronal mass ejection is large, fast-moving bursts of plasma. So solar wind, you can't really see it. You just see the coronal holes and you know, oh, that's probably going to be more solar wind. You don't physically see the solar wind on the charts coming at us all the time. It's not as intense. But that can get overridden, or in a way, that solar wind is just kind of background information to a giant burst of plasma that just pops off the sun. And we've seen them, you see them, they bubble out really big off of the sun, kind of here. There you go. So that's a very intense example. I should have chosen a different picture, but usually you'll see where you're looking at a more zoomed out picture of the sun and then you see this big bubble of energy come off of the sun. That's a CME. And it's caused by a release of magnetic energy at the sun. So this is caused by like the magnetics shifting rapidly in a way, and not as rapidly, but decently rapidly. It's caused by magnetic movement. They're also called solar storms when we get a CME, or space storms in popular media. Sometimes they're associated with solar flares. So in a way, CMEs and solar flares can often happen at the same time. They're both caused by magnetic shifts. So when a CME impacts Earth's magnetosphere, it temporarily deforms our magnetic field, usually because it's like actually squishing it down a little bit and causing, like, this impact literally causes our magnetic field to kind of be pressured on. It can also cause the direction of your compass needles to change. If if a CME is impacting you and you are paying attention at that perfect time, you'll notice that your compass will actually like change polarity. Like it'll cause a magnetic change in your environment for a brief time. And it also induces large ground electrical currents on Earth itself, which is why people who watch earthquakes also watch, and volcanoes also watch for CMEs and solar weather, because this energy coming into the Earth can cause the Earth to do some things too. And so this is called a geomagnetic storm. There's certain levels of geomagnetic storms. They're measured in X-ray. They tend to be measured in X-ray intensity. There's multiple storm levels. So Sometimes, you know, an X class or an X storm or an A storm or a B storm or an M storm. It depends. You know, there are tools online that'll tell you what level of storm this is. And CMEs also can influence our aurora borealis. So with solar flares, those big ballooning uh, expulsions, which are easy to see, there can also be solar flares, which are much harder to see and they're faster. Instead of a CME, they take a long time. You can see them hours and hours and hours go by as this plasma just bubbles out into space off of the surface of the sun. But solar flares, they're fast and they're very hard to watch and see. They have specifically made equipment to be able to see it, but it's tricky. And they are found whenever the reason we care about solar flares is because they're super fast, they're hard to see, they're very, very powerful. And that also influences like solar storms, like X class flare once melted all the telephone lines in North America back in like 1877 because they didn't have the technology back then probably to predict solar flare, but the solar flare came and it melted all their wires. And that's why they care so much about this. That's why they monitor the sun so much, because it's about your keeping good tabs on your investments, your technology investments, either outside of the protection of the Earth magnetosphere, which is very big. It's a very big field around the Earth. It's huge. But even if you have stuff hanging out on the outside of there, you're going to want to make sure that that's, you know, safe. And then, you know, whatever you got floating in the magnetic sphere and the atmosphere, and, you know, whatever technology you've got on Earth, and who knows, maybe just slightly underground. But maybe that's why they do deep underground things, because it protects more from these disturbances, because they happen so fast, they're hard to avoid. So when you're looking at solar weather and you see them talking about sunspots and you see these black little spots on the sun, not coronal holes, those are usually much bigger, and they're measured at a different wavelength of light. But these holes are magnetic spots where one hole is usually positive and one hole is usually negatively magnetized. And the interaction between those two next to each other is what causes this flash, this flare to come out. And here, this one will play. So if you can see that just like a little sparkly light that's shining out from there, those are flares. Boom, 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 boom. And that overarching, you know, you can see that more round looking energy. That is more so, that's the energy that's curling back towards, through gravity, back towards the sun through the magnetics. But those flashes that you're seeing, that's the energy that didn't go back. And that's just from the point of view of the satellite. It's getting flashed like right away. Like that energy is arriving very quickly, speed of light, obviously, to that thing, and then very quickly to Earth. And they say, you know, with CMEs, they're slower. They're slower, they balloon out, and then they take a few days to get here. That energy moves slower. It takes around 3 days. So whenever we see a CME, you know, you got 3 days warning basically, that then on the third day your back hurts. That's pretty common. That's how I do it. But with flares, you don't get that as much time. You know what I mean? It's pretty fast. And they produce electromagnetic radiation across the electromagnetic spectrum at all wavelengths, including radio waves and gamma rays. So it's like a full spectrum blast of just energy coming out of the sun. They're very powerful and amazing things. And in my opinion, they inform life. They give life. And um, it's incredible to me. I think about it all the time, the magic and the beauty of these alive, sentient beings. In my opinion, the sun and the earth, the stars, and us are all very sentient beings. And we have this dance we do together. And the dance that the sun's doing is a pretty big dance because it's a huge bit of energy nearby us. So it's good to pay attention. It says majority of flares are not visible to the naked eye, but they must be observed with special instruments, which is true. So you're also a special instrument, just so you know. But when they're like, hey, a solar flare just happened, it's pretty much that day, in my opinion, that's when that energy is really arriving on the planet. And you'll also notice during solar flare times and during CME times and high solar wind times, where a lot more of this electromagnetic energy is being imported here from the sun, informing our Earth, informing our DNA. That's when they'll do the spraying in the sky. That's when they will block the energy from reaching you, or filter the energy, I should say, from reaching you. And I've had multiple meditations where I've basically been told that a lot of the spraying and stuff that we're seeing now is more so helpful to us in protecting us from certain frequencies of light that maybe are a little bit more damaging to people who've been living under negative chemtrails for many years and have basically been filtered out from a certain wavelengths of light of the sun in our environment. And so our bodies have developed and mutated in a certain way that's not accurate for our actual environment. And so, in my opinion, what I've been told many times in my meditations is like, in a way, what the sun is giving us is like prescribed energy for informing life, but what they're doing in the air is like prescribed redirection and reintroduction of these energies, because there was a time when we mutated where we couldn't, now we can't absorb it properly, and it could cause us more harm than good. And that's just straight up coming from me, but a lot of people have resonated with that theory, but I just wanted to share it here with all of you on this video. Okay, so what are the effects on you? This is from heartmath.org, actually, this article, and it quotes, this is basically the summary of their study. And it says, human regulatory systems are designed to adapt to daily and seasonal climatic and geomagnetic variations. So we're super flexible. We are meant to be. We're walking the surface, us and all the beasts walking the surface and all the animals and so on. We're pretty flexible to a variety of the electromagnetic spectrum that is coming through our atmosphere. However, sharp changes like a solar flare and geomagnetic activity and geomagnetic storms can stress these regulatory systems of our bodies, resulting in alterations in melatonin and serotonin balancing, which is, about sleeping and about your mood. And then blood pressure is another one. Immune system is another one. Reproductive, cardiac, and neurological processes. So reproductive, that's your whole gonadal and hormonal system. Your cardiac, that's your heart. That's the core of your electromagnetic field. And your neurological processes, which is where your brain waves are hanging out. So all of these areas of your body are, meant to be informed by these, but sometimes they're over-informed, and your body has a little bit harder of a time adjusting. And that's why I think they do spray sometimes, because they predict that perhaps the flares and stuff that are coming in are going to be too hard on people. And I also think that's why they have people quarantined because of coronavirus, literally the corona of the sun. It possibly is giving us too much, and it could cause people's systems to not run really good, and then they'll think they're sick and there's a problem. So instead they were like, we're going to nip it in the bud and say you are going to get sick of something and you should be careful. So when they do get sick of something, even if their tests come back negative from this particular issue, they're still getting informed beforehand that they may get sick and they may not feel good. And if you know about space weather, most people who are sick, and they know why, because they're like, well, we just had a solar flare and I feel like crap. Okay, it'll pass in a couple days, and that's the end of it. Instead of people being like, I need to go to the doctor, I need tests, I need to quarantine, I need to wear a mask, I need hand sanitizer up my nose, like all this stuff. Like it's such a huge variety of response to what this is. And I really do believe, like, I've been preparing before this virus came out, this viral, or what, the pandemic or whatever they're calling it. And the fact they call it corona, I was just like, you're kidding me. I've been watching and helping people with symptoms because of space weather for years now. And now all these same symptoms, except for like respiratory symptoms, which are not as common, I've noticed. Sometimes blasts, people will be like, yeah, my lungs hurt, or my throat hurts, or my heart hurts, or my gut hurts, or my brain hurts. Certain chakra centers hurt. We didn't even talk about chakras in this one, but Those are also areas of electromagnetic energy that are swirling on your body, according to the chakra science. But anyways, so what are the effects on you? There's many effects. Most of you probably already know. Probably some of you have ones that are your go-to. Mine is neck pain, back pain. Some people it's migraines, unfortunately. Some people it's lacking of sleep. Some people it's nausea. Some people it's extreme irritability. Some people it's extreme euphoria. There's a lot going on. And every dose that we get from the sun and from the cosmos, it has a different effect on us, in my opinion, almost always. But sometimes there's factors that comb through that a lot of people have in common during each blast, but each blast is unique and your DNA is unique. And your DNA is being informed by these blasts, in my opinion. And your DNA is going to express in a unique way to adjust to these environmental factors. So how do you watch? How can you watch when there is geomagnetic and like solar flare, X class stuff hitting us? You should follow the KP index, which is available online. You can find it in multiple places. Multiple sites have it. Again, SolarHam.com has it on there. You can check it out. Here's an example of a KP4, or a low KP, which are the green, and then it goes up into the red, which is a higher geomagnetic storm. And those are the times, you may be feeling weird. So check that chart out for yourself if you don't already. And also watch for redacted data in solar and Schumann resonance and EMF online sources. So all the sources I just shared with you, if you ever notice that there's just hours missing, and sometimes it's easier to hide it on certain charts than others, but you'll see if you're watching the times that they share, sometimes they just take out hours and hours and hours of solar footage and they just instead of making it black and just you watch like a few seconds of just nothing, they just clip the two ends together. They just delete a few hours, and then they clip those hours together, so you don't even notice that they're missing a lot of the time. But those are also good indicators that something's probably happening because they're just hiding it. Well, you did it. You did it. Achievement unlocked. You have completed. We have, let's be honest. Whoops. We have completed this presentation, this class. This is your official certificate. Those of you watching this on the replay as well, congratulations. Thank you for joining the first ever 25 question and answer space weather and Schumann resonance class hosted by myself, Alexis of Ascension Diaries. Today, January 16th, 2021, this is where I was at in my journey of this research. I'm glad to share this all with you. This class recording is going to be available on my YouTube channel, as I said, but becoming a member of my website, ascensiondiaries.com, or getting the $1 membership or $11 membership or $40 membership will allow you to get that information no matter what. Or if you prefer Patreon, I also have a Patreon you can jump onto there and share the love. So please, subscribe to my channel if you want to keep getting space weather updates from myself. I will be going live whenever there's anything that's really alarming that I think people should know, as well as I think regularly. I'm going to do it on a weekly basis. Either way, we're going to take a peek at the space weather no matter what happened together on a weekly basis. Like I've been doing live streams on Wednesdays and Sundays, and I may do another day of the week where we do space weather updates too. So that's what I'm famous for in a way in my own community. So I got to keep up with that for sure. But just wishing you, I'm so grateful to have you all here. Please, if you're interested in joining the next events, those of you watching, become a member, sign up now before January ends for the $1 deal. You can also join our Telegram group and channel. It's called Ascension Diaries channel on Telegram. And also, if you donate on my site, you scroll all the way to the bottom, there's a donation button to show some love. If you really like this class and you want to, offer some more than what you already paid for it, because some of you only paid $1. And if you're like, yeah, this was a good class and I want to offer some love to this lady, that's an opportunity. You can do that, but it's not necessary. I truly am doing this from the bottom of my heart because I love what I do and I know the universe provides in whatever way. So if you want to be a part of that, then you be a conduit of that. But I know that everything's going well. So far, so good. I've been doing this for many years and I'm slowly, incrementally getting better, doing better, reaching more people, connecting more, and increasing my own knowledge base of this to share with everyone. So Thank you all very much for being in the video as well and in being in the live class. Thank you for being in the Zoom call, everybody. I appreciate it. Whoop. There it goes. I got lost there for a second. And I'm going to now check in your questions for any last minute questions that you'd like to add into this video that's going to be, viewed online for other searchers and seekers who may not even know what to ask or are new to this. If you'd like to add, I'm just going to read your comments and then we're going to wrap it up. And that'll be the end. I'll stop recording. Yay, that was awesome. Learned so much. Thank you. Thank you, Alexis. Keep up the excellent work. Thank you very much. Thank you, Jay. Thank you, Kinga. Thank you, Tessa. Thank you, Victoria. Thank you, Darren. Thank you very much. Thank you, Cherise. I appreciate you all so much. I don't see any more questions coming in. So that's going to be the sign off for this video. Please sign up for my website and please subscribe to my YouTube channel and share this video with people you love. I hope that this was a helpful, resource for you. And I'm wishing you all the best out there with all of the solar weather and space weather that's going to be coming our way this year, especially. So just so you know, we're predicting some fun things coming in. So heads up is good. Heads up is good to have. That's what I'm doing this for. So thank you all very much. And I will see you on the next video.